Hi YouTube, it's VEDA Day 6, and today I'm going to tell another anecdote. Apparently a lot of you guys like the anecdotes, so I'm going to keep them coming because I got plenty that I can share. But today's topic is going to be the scariest night of my life. And growing up in the Midwest, you get severe weather every spring and summer. It's just a fact of life for us who live here in the Midwest. And there are some storms that are more memorable than others, but this one particular storm was the first storm that I can remember where I truly was afraid of what was going to happen. And to help me tell the story, I'm going to give you now meteorologist John Chandick from WLUK-TV up in Green Bay. He's since retired, but he's going to introduce a little piece that I recorded from my archive, that I have in my archival files, talking about this night.
Well, tornadoes aren't the only destructive storms in Wisconsin. Severe thunderstorms can be every bit as dangerous when accompanied by strong winds. Many folks in northeastern Wisconsin can remember a storm that struck on a Wednesday night in May of 1989. Because of the severe and widespread damage, many suspected a tornado. But the fact that all of the debris was blown in the same direction indicated that straight-line winds were to blame. The winds, peaking at 88 miles per hour, were part of a thunderstorm that soaked the region with more than 2 inches of rain. Homes, farms, and businesses throughout the region were devastated by the winds, which were strong enough to drive boards into the side of a building. A Shiocton woman died when she was pinned underneath her mobile home. Sheet metal lay crumpled like scraps of tinfoil, and stately trees were reduced to kindling. Tens of thousands of homes were left without power, despite around-the-clock work by utility crews. Damage estimates soared to nearly $10 million, $3 million in Brown County alone. Dramatic evidence of nature's awesome power.
Yes, this was one of those days where I certainly remember. I remember the events of that day very well, because it was one of those days where, watching the weather, with the way technology was back then, they definitely were calling for concern on this particular day. And what I remember was that they were talking about, we were under a tornado watch, and I remember talking about on the weather how the storms were going to come in after dark, and they were all worried about what was going to happen. And I remember watching TV in the living room that night. About 7 o'clock, the storm started coming into the viewing area. And pretty much from about 7 o'clock onwards till I went to bed, the weather crawls going across the bottom of the screen were going non-stop. And there were severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, all that good stuff. And so I remember going to bed about 8 o'clock, and that storm, it hit my house at about 9 o'clock. And the rain, the wind, the thunder, lightning was the most intense that I'd ever experienced up to that time. And I could actually feel the house shake from the wind blowing. We had a huge satellite dish on the side of our house, and it was anchored to the house. And my room was on the other side where it was anchored, and I could hear it pulling on the house. I mean, that's how strong the wind was going. And I remember I was just completely underneath the pillows while this storm raged around me. And in fact, I also have very, very vivid memories of a similar storm that happened 6 years earlier during the summertime. But it was the same thing that night, 6 years earlier, where I was just in bed, completely under the covers, just absolutely scared out of my wits. I remember peeing and pooping in my bed. I was so scared. And the next morning, this is the same storm. This is the storm from '83 that I'm talking about. But the next morning, the wind had blown so hard that it actually blew the front door to our house open. And we had no screen doors on the house at the time, and so after that event happened, my dad put a screen door up, and then to give extra security, he took a block of wood, or like a long plank of wood, and propped it up against the door to act as a wedge, so that if something like that ever came through again, he couldn't open up the house like he did that night. But getting back to 89, the next morning, so yeah, the storm passed, and the next morning, we had actually had a tree in our backyard that was, I don't remember what kind of tree it was, but it used to be straight, and then that morning it was leaning about 45 degrees. And so we almost lost a tree in our yard, but coming to school the next morning, we had, the playground talk was all about the night before, and I remember some kids telling about how, they spent the night sleeping in the basement and whatnot, and then I remember we had a big classroom discussion about it, talking about our experiences, what we all experienced, and yeah, that was probably one of the most nerve-wracking nights I've ever went through, was that storm. And I can only maybe think of one storm since that time that I can remember that's probably just as intense, and that didn't happen too long ago. But that's going to be my VEDA for today. I hope you enjoyed my little weather story. I know I'm not the best storyteller, but you'll have to excuse me. I'm trying. So, as always, if you liked this video, please thumb it up. Please comment on my videos, and please subscribe to my channel.